Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Ryan Heckman, the CEO of Rallyday Partners, and this is the Founders Journey podcast. We'll explore the heart and soul of great founders and their journey to build the company of their dreams. You will learn about new industries and business models while discovering how to apply the founder's mindset to your everyday work and life. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Founders Journey podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Heckman from Rallyday Partners, and I am super excited to be welcoming, how do we even describe Mark Hopkins? Mark is my business partner. Started Rallyday with Nancy and I back in 2018. Mark is a role model for me. He's at a little bit more of an advanced age than I am, and I've always looked up to Mark and have known him since 2005, I want to say. And Mark is a friend, and maybe the best friend a guy could have. And I was really looking forward to this time together. It's rare that you get to interview someone of this magnitude in my life. And we've got like an hour and 15 minutes, and I just want to relish every second and minute of it. Welcome, Mark. Thanks for being part of the podcast.
Oh my gosh, Ryan, talk about setting the bar high. I'm not sure I can live up to that, but I appreciate the kind thoughts and reflect them right back at you. We have been an amazing couple of partners with Nancy and Frankie along with us. It's been a heck of a ride, and can't wait to dive into whatever subjects you want to dive into today.
Yeah, I think we should start maybe with a little bit of context, in terms of how you got to Rallyday and so forth and so on. It's not a typical private equity guy's journey. That's for sure. We're better for it, but it's anything but conventional. Why don't you, if you don't mind, a quickie tour, take us from the Finger Lakes of New York, which you have informed me about, all the way to getting here on this podcast today.
Oh, shout out to Corning and the Finger Lakes. It is a little slice of heaven, at least for 3 or 4 months of the year. Yeah, I grew up about a stone's throw, maybe 45 minutes from Cornell. And I was attracted to math and science. So I got an engineering degree at Cornell, and had the good fortune of having a buddy take me skiing with his family in Aspen when I was a sophomore in high school. And I just kind of looked around and said, this whole state of Colorado is where I belong. That's where I'm going to be eventually. Put my head down and did what I needed to do at Cornell. When it came to graduation, I was only looking at companies that were in Colorado, and convinced Hewlett-Packard to give me a chance, and went to Fort Collins, Colorado, and started my engineering career there. Pretty quickly realized there were some things I didn't know that would benefit both me and my company I was trying to serve. Convinced them to send me back to Stanford to get a master's in something called manufacturing systems engineering, where we were trying to make sure that we were designing and manufacturing products consistently on a global basis. I'll leave it at that. But the important thing about that is spending a year in Silicon Valley really opened my eyes to this concept called entrepreneurship, which was kind of new to me at the time. And almost like my first introduction to Colorado, it's like, this was another discovery. I am going to be an entrepreneur. But I had made commitments. I went back to Hewlett-Packard, stayed there for another 3 years while I did what I said I was going to do. Realized I needed to get smarter in some areas that I hadn't gotten exposure to. So I took another tour of duty with a division of Emerson Electric, also in Colorado. And then when I was ready, started a company that ended up being as a manufacturing guy, I started a manufacturing company. It was a medical device contract manufacturing company called Peak Industries. Learned a lot of the life lessons we're going to talk about today, and career lessons in that little petri dish of a company that grew from kind of nothing to 300 employees, 3 facilities, 150,000 square feet, a lot of customers, a lot of headaches, and a lot of learning. Eventually sold that company.
And a lot of EBITDA.
Eventually learned, or I actually met you, Ryan, through the process of trying to access growth capital. Ended up not in taking private equity capital at the time. Instead, got an unsolicited offer that was a really good offer to combine our company with part of Delphi, which was looking to really create a new initiative in medical devices that I thought would be pretty exciting for our company. Didn't work out very well because Delphi was really in trouble with their automotive business, but the sale of the company was a success. And that gave me some time to do something I've always wanted to do. And we're going to get into this later. And that's, write a book that captured some of the learning through that period of time. Then started a little company called Crescendo Capital Partners, which was doing early stage investing, mostly based on the entrepreneurs that I ran into as part of the book process and consulting activities that came out of the book. And there were some people I just quite frankly wanted to invest in. And so we did that for a number of years until I met you and Nancy and decided that, hey, we could do what I'm doing, but on a much bigger scale. And, at my advanced age, you do start thinking more about legacy and impact. And for my last hurrah, I wanted to make some bigger investments than I had the ability to make personally. So, Ryan, that's great entry for you in terms of opening up to me about the wide world of private equity, the good, the bad, the ugly, and how we kind of had a choice between going deal by deal and raising money as we went, or kind of biting the bullet and figuring out what we were all about and go on the road and sell it and raise a fund. Obviously, we chose the latter path and don't regret it for a minute. We've had an amazing run as you're on the road right now, closing Fund 3.
Well, thanks. I think it's so funny that I barely heard you gloss over the fact that you went to Cornell for undergrad and Stanford for your MBA or whatever. I think that's so funny. I think if I went to those universities, I'd probably lead with that, but I get it. I'll tell you, Mark, one of my favorite memories about you, and I have a ton, one of which Nancy sent us over text this weekend, you and I hiking together. But there was this moment at your daughter's wedding in Wyoming where I was sitting at a table with your best friend, Glenn Russo, and his wife, and you walked your daughter down the aisle of the reception. And I just looked over there. You were in a tuxedo and with your daughter and all of these people at this crazy cool place was it Saratoga, Wyoming? Is that the name of that town?
Brush Creek.
Yeah. What's the name of the town near there, though?
Yeah, it's Saratoga.
Saratoga. Sound like an old married couple right now. But anyway, so Mark was walking down the aisle and I literally teared up because, here's a guy I've looked up to all these years and just this look of, it was like a humbly regal walk down this aisle with his daughter. And I was just like, man, someday I want to be Mark Hopkins.
Oh, come on.
No, it was just so cool. And that I get to work with you every day is it's really something. All right. So anywho, the purpose of getting together for this podcast is as follows. Mark, just sort of at the tail end of his entrepreneurial life, building Peak, he decided to write a book for his daughters that would impart his lessons learned, wisdom acquired, that would be a legacy contribution to their lives. The book is called Shortcut to Prosperity, and I won't steal Mark's thunder when he explains why he named it such. But my favorite part of this book, one, I got to know Mark so much better reading it. That was cool. But the opening page in the book, it says, "This book is dedicated to Jenny, the underwriter of my dreams." It's the most romantic gesture a man could give a wife. Tell us about the book. Tell us about the title. Tell us why you did it. And tell us how you landed on that dedication, which means so much to me and probably to Jenny.
Well, we'll circle back to that. But you asked me to try to condense the book into a few lessons that if I was going to summarize the book and the key message, what would it be? And the last one that I'm going to share with you is partner up with a kick-ass life partner. And so I'll get back to that. But the whole motivation for the book was my discovery that, gosh, wisdom is not created nor destroyed. It's kind of out there and it's not added to very fast. People are learning the same lessons over and over and over that have been learned by people that have come before them. And the problem is it takes a long time to learn these lessons if you don't have any help or guidance in figuring out which way to look. And I guess it begs the question, first of all, you got to be somebody who's paying attention, who cares about gathering wisdom. There's a lot of people that we interact with that don't, but we actively try to interact with people who do want to learn and grow. And Ryan, you're example one of somebody who cherishes that and does it. Since I've known you, you've changed for the good tremendously, and it's through a lot of effort. But anyway, so this belief that there's no new wisdom, but it takes a long time to learn. And my kids I think most of our kids these days, if they're blessed to be in a family with some resources, and I'm not talking about a lot of resources, but just enough resources that, hey, going to college is not a question. And it wasn't for my kids. So they're pretty programmed up until they got to college. And then they're in college as a sophomore, junior, or senior going, oh my gosh, I got to figure out what I want to do with my life. And how do I do that? And even if I knew what direction I wanted to go in, what's the best way to kind of accelerate that path? So the word shortcut is kind of a oxymoron because there's no shortcut to all the hard work you got to put in to get to where you want to get to in life. But there is a shortcut in terms of if you can figure out where you want to go, there are some things you can do, some lessons you can learn, and some activities you can undertake going to really drastically accelerate your ability to get there and the time it takes to get there. So that was the motivation. And another theme that you've heard me talk about, Ryan, before is be a little selfish in everything you do. I don't know a lot of 100% selfless people. There are some out there, and I'm not one of them. One of the things that I thought about is I can solve this problem for my kids and at the same time put something out there that might help other people. And as you get later in your career, you do think about service. I think service is something that is selfish. The person who is serving gets more of it, perhaps, out of it than the person being served. Oh, another important point with that, it's a tough dance you do with your kids in terms of they're wanting to listen to you at the time that you have the ability to share what they want to hear. And so I thought it would be nice if I could put together this kind of volume of what I thought was useful information that they could pick up and access whenever it was right for them. And that pretty quickly expanded to, well, if it's right for them, it's probably right for a lot of other people. And, people will get different things out of the book. Nobody's going to say, yeah, this is the exact set of wisdom I want. But there's going to be a thing or two out of every book you read that are really going to hopefully launch you and accelerate you on that path. So that's a little background on how the book got started.
Yeah. And just so that we get on the same page definitionally, Mark, describe to me in your mind words the difference between knowledge and wisdom and kind of riff on why wisdom seems to be in the air at your fingertips, but maybe harder to access other than through, really hard experiences, sadly. I mean, what is it? What is this word? It's kind of funny, right?
Well, I think I could take a couple tacks there. As an engineer, I kind of think that I take, you could have learning, but the wisdom is the ability to apply that learning. And so there's a lot of stuff that you can learn when you're being educated, but being able to apply it to the benefit of you and the team of people you're working with is really where wisdom comes in. And the ability to have that wisdom and apply that learning really is a function of life experience. And I think that's probably where you would go with this, Ryan. Life experience is what turns knowledge into wisdom. The ability to see something in action and go, oh, this is how that works. You apply this in this way and you get this outcome. And then if you have a repetitive situation where you could see it over time, it's like, yeah, maybe I wasn't quite right on this. It's a little bit different than I thought. But you start to see that, if I do something the right way, 80% of the time, it's going to turn out this way. And that being a good thing. That's how I would probably sneak up on wisdom.
Yeah. And I've often thought, there's this expression that youth is wasted on the young.
Yeah. Wisdom is wasted on the young, or knowledge.
No, it's like youthfulness. Like when you feel so young, it's sort of wasted because you don't know like how special it is when you have maximum physical ability and, desire. And then the opposite of youth is wasted on the young is this notion that age is wasted on the old, meaning that typically when we tap out or we are at the peak of our wisdom through a lot of lived experiences, sometimes that happens to us when we're at an age where maybe we're retired or older or, less relevant to the world in some ways. And that's just sort of a paradox, I suppose, that when you're young, you don't know how special it is that you're young. And when you're old, it's too late to apply your wisdom. In some ways, when I read your book for the first time, it made me feel like you were giving me something from the future that I could use earlier and then apply your wisdom to my life at an age when it would have a lot more impact.
Damn, mission accomplished. You said it better than I did. That's exactly what the purpose of the book was. And I'm glad you took it as such.
I remember when I read it, I was sending you screenshots over text. I was like, oh man, that's a good one. All right. thank you for telling us why you wrote the book, and we'll get to the Ginny part. It sounds like later in this hour.
We will.
All right, so break it down. So if I were to type into AI, what should I be learning from Mark's book? Kind of maybe let's break it into sections and make sure if there's 5 sections, for example, let's do one. Tell me what you were wanting to teach, and then let's riff on how you have applied that to your career and how you hope people apply it in their lives.
Okay.
I don't know if it's in 5 chapters, but whatever.
Well, I'll even start, it's actually 6 points, but I'll start at a higher level than that. The core premise that I developed, and I still believe, is that many of us make 2 critical mistakes early in life. And this is really along the lines of, youth is wasted on the young. First is that we waste time doing work we don't love because we don't know any better. And the second is that we only tap into a fraction of what we are capable of. So the whole book is about addressing those 2 things. Figure out how to get really pointed in the right direction. How do you do that? How do you get pointed in the right direction early? And then how do we maximize what we're capable of? And so that's the impetus of the book, and some core lessons that go into that. I think it'd be better, Ryan, if I buzz through them first and then have you zero in on kind of what you want, because we have limited time and we got lots we could talk about. But I'm going to go through them fast, and then we'll come back and kind of dive in where it's interesting.
Deal. Sounds good.
So, and these go, as I thought about it, it's really not the order of the book. It's the order of the way I would look at life now. That the world is a super competitive place. And you had better, if you're going to be successful in this life, this one life you get to live, you better develop a differentiated level of knowledge and capability. So, yeah, the world's probably never been a flatter or more level playing field. And AI makes it even more level. But you better have something to say. You better have deep knowledge. And so this is really a diving into Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours, and how do I get that knowledge, and how do I accelerate that process? And that begs the question right there, is that how do I make that easier? How do I make that development of differentiation, that level of knowledge, gaining that? How do I make that easier? And my answer to that is one of the things in the book I talk a lot about, is following your curiosity. Learning is hard, but learning when you're curious about something and you're answering these questions that you're asking yourself is really easy. And I think the secret to life is figuring out how to tee it up so it's easy. So we can dive into that more.
I just wanted to say it's such a first principle comment that you just made, the point you're making.
Yeah.
And it reminds me, if you were to say, it is easy to eat when you're hungry. Right?
Yeah. We could talk about incentive structures. And you and I went for a walk 2 days ago and talked about incentive structures. I mean, you've got to be smart about, this is some of the wisdom. I used to think if there was, 4 people in the room and we had a problem to solve, and the problem was interpersonal, I would center on what I need the other people to do differently. Basically, how I need them to change. And I would never start there today. That is like the most unproductive thing you could ever do, is start with, you got to change. That's really dumb, and it's really ridiculous. But you can change incentive structures. You can change systems. You can change processes. You can make people happy doing the things that you need them to do. Little sidebar there. And then the third lesson that taps into is, okay, it's going to be a lot of work to pursue whatever you want to pursue. Other than making it easy by following your curiosity, how do you get personally motivated? And I looked at highly motivated people that had been highly successful, and I saw this similarity of approach to problem solving that I called the prosperity cycle. And it's basically, it's a simple cycle where the ticket to ride, the way you enter it, is you either have to have personal hardship, and we all, I guarantee everybody listening to this podcast has personal hardship. To some people, what you're going through or have gone through may not seem like a big deal, but to you, it seems like a big deal, and that's all that matters. And you've got 2 responses you can have to that. One, you just kind of shrug your shoulders and say, I guess that's the way life is. The second is to say, I'm mad as hell, and I'm going to do something about it. And so the first step in this in this prosperity cycle is deciding to do something. And the other way that you get to enter that, it's a little bit easier way, more pleasant way, is by having a personal vision, a vision of the future that is so clear and so compelling that you cannot wait to get started on it. And again, that drives you to do something. So the first step is do something. And you know what? If you do something and you're motivated to apply discipline and time and effort into something, you're going to win every single time. But a win can look different. A win could be, hey, I got what I was shooting for and I feel great. Or, wow, it doesn't work quite like I thought and I learned something. And what we've done at Rallyday is really make sure that we are focusing on and we are working with people who are really value that learning piece, because the learning piece is so valuable. Everybody should be getting better at what they do every day, every month, every quarter, every year. And you only do that through learning. So turns out that winning and learning to most of us feels pretty damn good. And so that develops a confidence and satisfaction that gives you the perseverance to do that cycle again. And typically you go through that cycle again, it's a little bit bigger the next time. You bite off a little bit bigger chunk. And you do that over and over and over until, holy cow, you have just built an incredible company. And we're going to talk more about that. But so that's kind of the next step, is that, tapping into this source. And it truly is a infinitely huge source that you can tap into of your human capacity. And it's this prosperity cycle. The other thing that I wanted to pass on that I 100% believe in is that nothing worth doing gets done by an individual. Very few things in life. There's I'm sure I could point to some, but very little gets done by one person on their own. It's a team of people. You're attracting people who are like-minded and smart and motivated. And for whatever reason, they're choosing to align with you. And so that comes from genuinely caring about people. If you genuinely care about other people and they know it and feel it, they will run through brick walls for you. This genuinely caring about other people means that, if they feel that and sense that, there's a bond of trust created that allows you to be super productive and operate kind of as a unit rather than as an individual. And a unit comprised of many, many people can do amazing things. And there's one anecdote I will share, so we won't have to go deeper in this one later. You've heard me talk about carefrontation. And like I said, wisdom is largely not created. And I rip off wisdom wherever I can find it. And so when I was at Stanford and we had a quarter break, my girlfriend at the time, wife of 39 years now, came out and visited me, went for a little trip down the coast, and we stopped in Yosemite. And we went to a little non-denominational church where a guy gave a sermon on carefrontation. Basically, if there's somebody in your life that needs to change and you care about them, it's going to be a little confrontational and you have to do it. But if they know you care about them, you can say anything. And the same thing works in a business environment. If somebody knows you've got their back, you can give them any kind of feedback, direction, ask them for any kind of level of effort, and they will respond to their best of their ability. So this carefrontation thing is something that we do at Rallyday, and something that's a core tenet of the book. Finally, it's the second to last one. You got an earn and I can do anything attitude. And you do that by going through this prosperity cycle enough times that you're like, wow, anything I really want to do can be broken down into bite-sized chunks. And if I'm willing to work at it long enough and hard enough, I can get there. And what we do for other people, other founders we engage with, and each other, is basically give each other that confidence that you can do this. I'll give one simple example. If somebody comes up with a business that they say, next year, I think I can grow the top line at 20%. I think I can grow EBITDA by 35%. And there's some ideas in the room that could cause that to be twice that or 3 times that. Let's say that we could double the top line if we did certain things. And by doubling the top line, we would probably more than double the EBITDA. And I think my observation has been the success at achieving the first goal is about the same as the success achieving the second goal. And if you miss the second goal by a little bit, you will have improved on the first goal, but multifold. So, helping yourself first and then others earn this I can do anything attitude. And you've heard me say it before. If you don't believe it, you can't do it. You got to believe it first before you can actually do it. So we help people and organizations believe in themselves and their organizations to do incredible things. And so now we're at the last one, partner up with a kick-ass life partner. You need someone. We spend more time with our life partner than we spend with anybody else. And we need someone to do for us what we do for others, namely help us figure out and believe that we can do anything. And you get knocked down. If you're going to try to do hard things, it is not directly up and to the right. It's going to be a challenge, and you're going to get knocked down a lot. And you got to have somebody to help dust you off, pick you up and say, what did we learn? And you can still do this. I mean, get up, go it again. And Jenny has different ways of saying this, but the one I like best is, lean on me. Don't worry about it. Quote unquote, I'm a sure thing. Like, I am going to be there for you no matter what. And it's all going to be okay. And we're going to learn from this and we're going to go kick its butt, whatever it is. And that is super important. And you could expand that. A little corollary to that is business partners. I think business partners are almost as important as life partners. But again, it's all about time spent. And we spend a lot more time with our life partner than we do our business partner. So that's kind of the quick run through. Ryan, where do you want to dive in?
Well, I want credit at some point for holding back. I wanted to ask inquisitive questions about
each of those.
Yeah, each of those, or make a point or whatever.
Let me tee them up for you one by one.
Yeah, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I had some stuff, and I think it might be helpful, and I'll try to connect it to the work that we're doing now in private equity, so that we can create some applicable context. But yeah, let's go one by one if it's okay with you.
Okay. Did anything resonate when we talked about developing a differentiating level of knowledge and the importance of doing that, and the fact that the playing field has never been more level than it is today?
Yeah. And so, yes, perfect. And that's a great way to tee it up. I was at Oxford with Nadia in March. I went and toured that university, and they were bragging about, how many pages of books they had in this library. And it's a famous library. It's like, it's a big deal. And I don't know, 30 million pages of knowledge. Okay. And I asked Nadia, my wife, I said, how many pages of knowledge do you think is available over this OpenAI or Claude? And it's just kind of mind blowing, right? And this whole monument to civilization is at Oxford University with this library that's got 30 million pages. And it's like 1% maybe of the world's knowledge. Okay. So that got me thinking. And then more recently, I've been able to engage AI at a level of bringing wisdom, into it. And I don't think it's exceptional at that. But like the amount of information that is in our phones and available in a nanosecond, literally, is maybe 1,000 times more than you could consume at Oxford University in a lifetime. So when you make this point that differentiation and learning to be badass at something so that you're remarkable, captivating, and necessary to the world, that bar has maybe doubled, tripled, quadrupled, 10 times what it was 3 years ago. So in some respects, your book was ahead of its time, maybe spawning from the internet age, but now at the AI age seems fairly obvious. Tell me what you would, if someone was 17 or 18 years old and you were to write the book about this topic in this era, what would you say?
Yeah, I had a chance to think while you're talking. And what I imagine in my mind is a foundation that you build on that has just gotten so much bigger. So if you think of a triangle with you at the top of it, and you're the little tippy top, and it's built on everything that you know or can access and effectively know. And that has gotten so much bigger. But what I think is true about AI is the humanity that sits at the top of that foundation is so important and irreplaceable. And so being the spark that has the idea of what to do with all of that mountain of knowledge that's available to you, where to point it and how to leverage it to make people's lives better, to make this world a better place, there's not going away. I think that I would say that it's still people who are going to do incredible things with the support structure that you could have only dreamt about before. And not just, the support structure that you'd have in a multi-billion-dollar multinational company, but you have the same availability at your fingertips, like right now. I think we still need, as we are maturing young people, we need to figure out how to do intellectual work. We have to figure out, and those programs where they're emphasizing group work, super important. So how do you leverage yourself? How do you manage your time to be productive and a balanced human and live a good life? But how do you work hard and effectively and successfully and do it with other people? That's a skill that you have to learn. And you got to probably need some help with that. And colleges and universities that are done right help a lot with that.
Yeah, we won't get to the bottom of it today. I do think that, funny enough, I was at the University of Colorado about 2 years ago, riffing on some of this. And my fellow panelists made this point that interesting things happen to people who are doing interesting things. And it's this whole notion that when you're in college, perhaps the ultimate alpha, I'm using this word in an investment return context, but let's just say going to college is beta, which is like show up and let that college produce you. Maybe those days are over, and that the alpha that you can get out of college is the experiences, the people that you meet, the challenges that you encounter. Somehow that is a vessel for life development that kind of inures to your benefit later in life. If that's true, then the ideal state of mind is go learn a little bit and go do a bunch of cool shit. We've probably beat it to death, but that's a big topic that your book talked about. And, part of the Rallyday model is that we think there's value to the experiences that the managing partners at this firm have had building companies from zero to scale. And that wisdom is really valuable to society and to our portfolio companies that you can't get from AI,
Yep, I agree.
All right. What was the second one, Mark?
Second one was about curiosity. I'm going to flip this one on you. It's not just what you learn from operating businesses. It's what you learn from other life lessons. And so not many people on this podcast will know that Ryan was an Olympic cross-country skier and ski jumper. And he shared with me on a couple occasions how frustrated he was, that there was a kind of a guy that will remain nameless that was kind of a goofball, but he would compete really well. And you were really curious about that. Why is it that I am working 10 times harder than this guy and he's having better success than I am? And you absolutely flipped the script and ran by him by being curious about that and changing your approach to training. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the context of this was I was in 2 Olympic Games, 92 in Albertville, France, 94 Lillehammer, and it was formative. I was young, 17, 18 years old, kind of young, I didn't know it at the time, but it was kind of the ultimate petri dish, using your words, Mark, where I could study exceptionally talented people competing on a level playing field mostly to become the best in the world at something. And it's rare, maybe, I could say now on reflection, that you get to do that. Maybe at Harvard University or Stanford or Cornell, maybe there's a version of this, where, if you become a student of other students and all this stuff. But for me, at this young age, I was trying to figure out, okay, so what are the habits and characteristics of the first place person compared to the 100th place person? And I was somewhere in the middle, Eventually, I was 9th in the world, but that happened over a long time, and it was very difficult. But this conversation that you and I had was like, okay, so what is the difference between the first and the last? And it was like a great place to experience this experiment. And I shared with you that I had two different teammates. I had one teammate who was the most habitually disciplined human being I had ever met in my life. He trained more than anyone on our team and otherwise worked harder. You might call him kind of the Tom Brady style or whatever. I had this other teammate who was a complete idiot. And if he were listening to this podcast, it's just fine because like he knows he was an idiot and he won every single time, working half as hard. And in fact, was so successful, won medals for our country, carried the flag in the opening ceremonies, which is a huge honor. It's voted for by your fellow teammates across every discipline in every Olympics. So whoever carries the flag at the Olympics, like that's a big deal because it means the most decorated, successful athletes across every discipline at that Olympic Games voted for this person to carry our sovereign country's flag in the opening ceremonies. So my curiosity was, okay, so how in the hell does the guy who works the hardest and is the most disciplined person I've ever met, kind of last place, and this other guy who worked half as hard is in first place and carrying our flag? And I have a couple answers to that now after thinking about it for 25 years, 30 years. Shit, that's longer than that. Number one, a competitive sport is different than life. And the life skills of working your ass off compound over time. And so, therefore, the outcome of these two individuals in life, measured by quality of family, occupation, wealth, etc., differed greatly. Okay. So that's one answer. But that still doesn't explain what I learned at that moment. And what my takeaway was, one of prioritization. And the second answer was performance. What I mean by that is that my application of these two people, I started to train like I was competing. So therefore, bringing that sense of I'm competing for the Olympic Games, I'm trying to get the gold medal, and I'm going to bring that to training on a Tuesday afternoon at 2 p.m. in Steamboat Springs with exactly 0 people watching me. So that was one adjustment that I made, was the fella who worked half as hard was like so pissed off when he wasn't the best that day that he actually like trained like he was competing at the Olympics. So I trained like I was competing and I competed like I was training. And that all of a sudden took my game up significantly.
I love that. And you wouldn't have, everybody got to witness that same dynamic. And you were, number one, paying attention. And number two, curious about why is this? And if you're paying attention and you're curious, you can learn some amazing things. And I thought that was a great example.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty funny.
So I want to get to the private equity part of this, but we got to buzz through this. Are there any others on here? We've got the prosperity cycle. We're
going to 3, which is, I think, prosperity cycle, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. We're going to go in order. We're going to get these done.
Okay.
So your third one was prosperity cycle, which was all about what? Give us the...
Well, the two ways to get in it, basically get into this upward spiral of competence and accomplishment that starts with, having the motivation to actually do something, to invest in something. And that could either come from personal hardship. And we talk a lot around here about founders with a chip on their shoulder. That usually comes from personal hardship. And we actually like this as long as it's in a healthy way being leveraged. The other way that you can get into it is through this like super exciting personal vision where like, wow, I can see the future. I want to make that future reality and I'm going to kill myself trying to do it. So yeah, what came to mind there?
Oh, I was in a radical alignment with you. And what I was pondering was what I have found in really good CEOs is their adversity is less from the past and more about them not reaching their future state quick enough. And those are two different versions of adversity. One is maybe inflicted upon you, this thing happened to me, or the industry's hard. And so therefore, we might call that the school of hard knocks. And I think that's perfectly attributable and a pattern that you and I have seen in some CEOs where, they got their teeth kicked in to them so many times or to such an extent that like they're just going to outcompete anybody because they don't want to feel that way ever again. They don't want to be a loser again. The problem with that version is that, you might spend half your life losing before you wake up and say, I don't want to do that anymore. I think that's a certain version of a chip on your shoulder. What I wanted to say when you brought this up was the most successful people I have met have an adversity of the future that drives them. And otherwise, like when your dreams are so big and your vision of yourself is so significantly bigger than who you are today, every day feels like adversity. And oh, by the way, when those people fail, they're generally better than everybody else. And it's simply by establishing a dream that is so much higher than everybody else that even when you fail, you're still awesome. And so I think there are two different chips on their shoulder. Maybe you meet people who are both of these things, have been a loser and want to be a winner to such an extent that they feel like a loser most days. That's what I wanted to say. That's what came to my mind. Curious, Mark, when you've worked with other CEOs, have you seen this pattern of people with such outsized ambition that they just are almost intolerable to be with?
Yeah. And I don't spend a lot of time with those people, and we don't invest in those people. So I don't have a lot of in-depth anecdotes to share in that because they're not very interesting to me. I think what you're bringing up is the two that are very interesting. And personally, I don't care whether they got a chip on their shoulder because of something that got done to them or whether they have a clarity of vision that is so motivating to them that they just can't wait to get to work every morning and they're going to make it happen. I don't care which it is because the outcome is the same. These guys are going, these women, these men are going to make progress and they're super motivated. And I'm going to give you an example of motivation if we get that far. It's actually one from the book where a woman named Amber had a son who had a disease that was probably going to end his life. And she basically, a quote from her is, when she got the feedback of what it would take to cure this disease, that nobody had ever, there was probably only 100 people in the world that were known to have had it. She said, I wanted to bawl. I bit my lip so hard it was bleeding, but I was like, I can't live with myself if I don't do this. And so if we can back a founder who has that, however they get there, that's a 10 out of 10. I don't expect we're backing founders that have the 10 out of 10, my kid life is in danger. But if we can have founders that are an 8 or a 9 and get to that point, I can't live with myself if I don't do this. That is how we're going to bridge over to private equity.
Ah, my man.
There you go.
That's a good one.
Okay, next.
All right. Number 4. What was
Carefrontation.
Huh?
Carefrontation.
Oh, yeah, that's an awesome one. So what Mark is saying here is that I'll put it in so many words, but I'll tell you what I was reflecting on and I'll try to probe a bit. But that one to me is something that has probably come to me later in life. And your key words there when you shared this was someone who genuinely cares for somebody. And the word in that is genuinely. Like, to what extent do you care? And is it about you or the other person? Or is it something else altogether? And I don't know what shift happened to me, but it was probably when I made the shift from private equity to being a CEO and a founder, when all of a sudden you care more about someone performing at a high level and kicking ass than you do about yourself. Or, like when you go into a meeting and if there's only 2 of you, you and this other person on your team, when your entire orientation in that meeting is to make sure that your partner and your teammate or whatever in that moment succeeds.
That's really well said, Ryan. And I think there are people that automatically flip that switch when they're in that moment. It's not about them. It's about that person. And when that switch gets flipped, and I kind of tear up thinking about it because it's just it's so powerful. Everybody, both participants know what has just happened. And the person that's the recipient of that kind of attention and dedication behaves differently because they're feeling it.
Yeah. And I don't know where that comes from. In private equity, a little bit of it is, our CEOs, carry the burden of the outcome way more than we do. In private equity, you have all of the responsibility of the outcome, but you have almost no authority. We don't get to go into a company and ask the head of sales to do more outreaches or, whatever. We just don't get to do that. So it's the epitome of working through someone as opposed to working at them or whatever. But I think that your point is simply that you can help somebody perform at a higher level only to the extent that you feel a desire for them to succeed. And implicit in that is like an elimination of your own objectives. I think about, my dad was a pilot and he had a teacher in the plane with him, like helping him learn to fly. And if that teacher was unsuccessful, they crashed. And I think in some ways, necessity is the mother of invention here, where when you truly are dependent upon somebody else, you immediately just stop giving a shit about yourself and you pour yourself into that person because you're only going to survive or thrive because of their actions. And I think that when you get to this place, funny enough, you become better at your job. It's weird.
Yeah. Let me riff on that a second, because you brought up something, and we're going back and forth between life and private equity. But I think one of the super important things to do is figure out who's the man in the arena. And in our world, the CEOs and founders are the men and women in the arena, and we aren't. And I think a lot of people in private equity sometimes get confused about who's in the arena. It's really easy to, give advice and tell them what they should have done and hold them to higher standards and, I'll see you next week, after kick their ass and tell them you see them next week. And, that is so backwards, because again, it's like carefrontation. If the person feels like, wow, this person understands that I am putting it out there, I am the man or woman in the arena, and they are trying to help me and they care about me. That's a huge distinction. We are not in the arena. And I think it really helps as private equity investors is the fact that we have been the man or woman in the arena. So we really do understand, and we'll talk about, how we meet these people and how we become the preferred partner, because we listen. We, figure out how to empathize with where they are, and we can do it because we've been there.
Yeah. There's that scene in The Gladiator when, what's the name of that star in that? Russell Crowe is walking underneath the arena. And, it's like his first day as a gladiator. And the guy next to him pisses on himself, because he's so scared. It's such a grim place. And sometimes I think about that image with our CEOs where I know they feel that way. They're about to go into battle or they feel overwhelmed. But I would only know that feeling had I been in that tunnel myself. So if I know that feeling, then it's like, okay, I'll even clean up the mess if that's helpful. I will hold them up. I will tell them I'm proud of them. I will tell them even if they die, I will take care of their families. Whatever that is. But until you've been in there, I think it's really hard to feel that genuinely, to use your word. And when you do, I do agree with you also that you can have the most difficult conversations ever, like your breath stinks kind of conversations. But if they know it's because you want them to get out there and kick some ass, like it's so different. It is so different. You can say anything because they know it's because you want them to go win. It's so different.
That's the essence. You nail it. Let's move on to earn and I can do anything attitude. And I'll tee you up to see what you want to say about it. But you can love or hate Elon, but he is a great example of the greatest example in our era of somebody who believes he can do anything. Some of the stuff he has done, let's just take one example. you're going to save enough fuel in this booster to fly it back to the Earth and fire rockets in such a manner that you're going to land it back on the platform that it took off from. I mean, how do you even get to that level of belief? But that is the level of belief he has. And because of that, it's like you said, if you aim for, 10x and you end up at 8x, you still crushed everybody. And so he's aiming at stuff that other people aren't even able to conceive of.
And remind me, Mark, what was the actual principle? Is this number 5?
This is number 5. Yeah, you got to earn this belief that you can do anything. And well, for 2 reasons. One is because if you don't believe it, you can't do it yourself. But also because you need to know that that's true so that when you're working with other leaders, you can breathe that capability or that belief into them that they can do things that they don't know they can do.
Yeah. When you shared this, my immediate thought was this may be the hardest of the 6, only because belief is, you talk about wisdom and knowledge and you just can't go out there and get wisdom. You can't buy it. You can't search for it, nor is it invented, as you said, or whatever. Belief is a wholly similar version of wisdom in that who the hell knows where belief comes from?
Oh, I do. And it's okay. In that first word, it's earn. And I can do anything else. You don't just get it. You got to earn it. And one answer, and there's probably other answers, my answer that's consistent with kind of what I wrote was that this prosperity cycle is what's going to allow you to earn it. You're basically going to stack win upon win, bigger and bigger, until you're like, I don't think there's anything that I can't achieve. That's how you earn it.
Right, which is a succession of setting goals, achieving them, and making even bigger goals the next time and over a lifetime. That sort of behavior compounds such that all of a sudden you're designing a rocket to land in reverse back on the launch pad.
I love your reference. You love your reference to compounding because it's very much one of those. Compounding is one of the eighth wonder of the world or whatever. It's so powerful. And you're right. These things build on each other to the point where, it becomes exponential.
It might suggest that setting goals is a forward-looking objective, but with rear-facing benefits. Meaning that if you just go through life and just kind of go and let life take you where it takes you and so forth and so on, you might convince yourself that life gave you certain prosperity. But if you're willing to set goals and live with the discomfort of maybe not reaching them, that somehow the next goal you make might be just a little bit higher and higher and higher. And so it might be that the benefit of goal setting is not what you do to get it, but when you look in reflection that you did. And so therefore your belief is higher the next one that you set. Does that?
Love it. That's well said.
Okay. All right. What was number 6 and maybe the most heartfelt one, if I may?
Yeah. Partner up with a kick-ass life partner. Finding somebody who is both your complement and and consistent at the same time. Just to put a little context on it, and from my personal life, Jenny was equally crazy as I was. And, after we decided to...
I might add, as successful too. I mean, she's a badass.
She's a badass and more energy than any 10 human beings I know. And it was almost like we had to do rock, paper, scissors to figure out who got to quit their job and go start something. And, because we needed to have that foundation, the financial foundation that we could pay a mortgage on. And as we had 2 young kids, but we both wanted the same thing and were willing to trade off as to, when we could do that and when we were going to be in a support role and when we were going to be in a lead role. And then, somebody that could just be your sounding board at all times. You could say, it's the ultimate of the confrontation thing, right? You can say anything without fear of being judged. And, think about in your life, if there's anybody in your life that you can talk to without fear of being judged, that's the level of partnership I'm looking for. And if you can find that in business, oh my God, so good. But you better find it in your life partner.
Yeah. I mean, this one is another episode, maybe.
Yeah.
And watching your marriage has been instructive. I mean, I had a lot of reflections when you brought this one up today. I think a lot of listeners will look at this instruction. Remind us the instruction.
The instruction is partner up with a kick-ass life partner.
Yeah. So people who are listening to this conversation will probably immediately go to, is my partner a kick-ass partner? And they'll have certain judgments, as I did when you said this. Am I with a kick-ass partner? For me, that means someone who's going to inspire me, to do bigger, better things for some reason. Who knows? Someone who has the confidence in me that I can get there, i.e., belief. Someone who will remind me or tell me when I'm not on track. The confrontational,
Carefrontation, yeah.
version of that. And someone who's gonna just love on me for me when I'm out in warrior mode, that replenishes me so that I can go back out to battle as the best version of myself. I might add another one, which is like really attractive and beautiful and all those kinds of things. That's what I thought of when you said that. And I think one thing I might point out is that few of our partners are ever going to live up to all of those things on all days.
Oh, of course. And you know what? I got a nugget that will be helpful in that vein. I said earlier, if you're starting out with how somebody else has to change for you to get what you want, you're going about it wrong. And so you could turn this one around and say, am I a kick-ass partner to my life partner? And because the best way to get that in return is to be that. And so, yeah. And I guess if you can be that and it's not being reflected back at you after a really, you got to do this for a while. It's not like you get to do it once and immediately it's going to be reflected. But if over an extended period of time, you do this and it's not coming back to you, then I think you have maybe a bigger problem to talk about. But it starts with, am I being the kind of partner that I want to have on the other side?
I mean, that is wisdom. It's so well said. I don't even know. I mean, that's just a perfect drop the mic moment. We should only demand of others that which we demand of ourselves, maybe I could say. And as I have found my kick-ass partner, you get what you give, and
Yep.
And it's maybe a cop-out to suggest that somehow life would be better if you had a different partner. Yeah. So, and part of this whole thing, I think, is also expressing gratitude and thanking your partner when they do fulfill one of these things, like saying thank you.
Yeah, it's easy to take people for granted.
All right, Mark Hopkins.
Let's turn to the PE, the fun part of this.
Yeah. So we're basically at an hour now. What's the long and short of all this? You wrote the book for your daughters. By the way, Mark Hopkins' daughters are exceptional in every regard. Good moms, good wives, good professionals. They live a full life. I've gotten the privilege of getting to know them over the years. But mission accomplished, Mark. How do you apply this book in your life as a managing partner at Rallyday real quick? What are some of the swing thoughts? You and I use this word a lot with each other that we can leave with our audience at this point, and then we'll end this session.
Yeah, I think the thing that it's really come down to for me, and we talk about this a lot, we want to invest, and I said this before, in these leaders who follow these lessons we've been talking about and are a 8 or 9 out of 10 in motivation. And our belief is that it's way easier to knock the rough edges off a person with unbridled motivation than it is to try to light a fire under somebody who doesn't have that or has an average level of motivation. We're not going to talk to anybody who's not motivated. They're not founding companies. But, if somebody doesn't have that, I don't think I can live if I don't try to accomplish this kind of thing. And so that's what we're trying to do. And the story I started to tell about Amber and her, she's in the book having overcome a very amazing series of hardships, growing up in a home with 2 parents that had substance abuse problems, moving 5 times, having battles over custody, so dysfunctional. Just one little anecdote. Holidays were the worst. She got good at calling 911 and trying to figure out how to phrase it so that the cops would come, but nobody would go to jail. That's kind of the level of home that she lived in. And holidays were weird. And one holiday got so bad, Thanksgiving, that one of the partners took the turkey out of the oven and threw it out in the front yard. And weirder, yet. It happened 2 more years. And so she basically said, okay, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to tell you more. I'm going to get out of this through going to college. And to go to college, I need a full ride because I don't have any money. So I'm going to apply myself in my high school. And she became the valedictorian, went to DU on a full ride, got a bachelor's and a master's in finance, and looked like she was on her way to the life that she wanted to live. She married, she had twins, a boy and a girl. And about a year in, she figured out the boy was not progressing like the girl. And he went to the doctor and said, my son can't move his hands. The doctor said, of course he can move his hands. Like, no, he can't. Turns out he has a genetic disorder that was pretty much it would be something really difficult if you couldn't overcome it, basically. And instead of saying, I guess I'm screwed here, her response was, this is just another hardship. And to make this really, really long story short, and you can Google it and read about it. It's not in my book because it happened after we were here at Rallyday. Just one anecdote of how committed she was. 10 years ago, all roads led to the same place in terms of there weren't that many people then that were doing genetic therapies. And she figured out there was this one guy in University of Texas, Southwestern Medical Center in Dallas. And his name is Dr. Stephen Gray, that kind of was the guy that could help her. And so she reached out to this guy, emails, voicemails, texts, no response. And she made it embarrassing for him. She was sending Panera cookies delivered to his office. And so he's like, okay, I guess I got to talk to this woman to make her go away. Had a brief conversation with her. And in the conversation mentioned that he was going to be in DC the next day at a genetic conference sponsored by the National Institute of Health. She got on a plane, went there. She didn't have right to go into the conference. She snuck into the conference without credentials, figured out where the guy was, what program he was in, a classroom, went in, sat down next to him and convinced him to have dinner with him that night. And at dinner, he laid out everything that would take roughly $7 or $8 million, preclinical studies, networking with everybody else that was studying this thing, and eventually developing a drug that you could actually be administered and get FDA approval to actually administer it. Long story short, she did that. And her son is recovering today. And they meet every 2 weeks with people around the world that want to talk to her and share her story. He's still the only person that has received this treatment. That is just like, oh my gosh, that's the epitome of commitment. And like I said, we're not going to find people to invest in that have that level of what's on the line. But again, that's who we're trying to invest in. And I think that's a great place to go. So if I was going to write another book, you asked me to think about what would the PE kind of compliments be to this Shortcut to Prosperity next book? And it's really, I'm glad you brought up the swing thought thing. We see some people with a beautiful golf swing. It looks effortless, right? So I would call this book Effortless PE Investing. And it starts, one step that I would add is you got to kiss a lot of frogs. I mean, you better have a top of the funnel that's just huge. And we have guys like Pad in our organization that are amazing at distilling how different we are and how we're different in a 15-minute conversation and getting the right to have the second and third conversation and getting to come visit us. So that would be kind of one addition. The second I've already referred to, which is this listen, empathize, and lean in, strive to change places with this founder. That's what we do. And that's what makes us interesting to them. It's like, oh my gosh, this person gets me and what I'm facing here and how hard it is. Third is look for a personal connection. Fourth is question, is this a true innovator, who's paid his due? I mean, we have to ask ourselves this question. And if they have, then they've probably opened up a whole new TAM. And that we look for immature markets that can grow well beyond what we are seeing. And somebody who's positioned themselves in front of this growing market. And, that's the challenge. Oh, I think the last thing that's really interesting, you could make this a whole nother podcast, is the cultural element. We talk a lot about culture, and we have to have a culture strong enough that the VP or associate that's having this conversation with a founder is able to see the same things in that founder that we look for. And that only comes through if you have a culture of celebrating those things that is so rich and thick that everybody in the organization gets it. And that's what we're trying to do here. And that's the book I would write. If you want to write it, I'll help. I'll edit it for you. How's that?
I think it's fantastic, Mark. Look, I think we've had a nice walk today on this podcast. A little parting story about Mark. that I'll leave everyone with is I was going through a rough time personally early in Rallyday's inception. And Mark asked me to go on a walk almost every day for 18 months. And his whole objective was to help me through this difficult time. And God knows how much Mark Hopkins listened to me riff on various things. But funny enough, this little hour and a half, little less than that today, reminds me a lot of those walks. And I hope that you all who are listening to this receive it in the same way that I did. This is a guy who's walked 1,000 miles up 1,000 mountains and had 1,000 successes. And all he wants to do now is help the rest of us do the same thing. And it's just such an exceptional gift, Mark, to Rallyday and our portfolio companies and now to this podcast that you're willing to share all this stuff with us. Thank you for the time and for your care and love.
Well, Ryan, right back at you. We've created something special here, and it's a reflection of the people that we've been able to attract that are like-minded, and when we're not like-minded, are patient enough to work through it. But yeah, you're very kind, and the service, as I pointed out earlier, is selfish. I get more than I give, and we have a little community here. Anybody can ask anybody anything. Anybody that's listening to this, if they want to reach out to me and ask a question about some part of this, I've got the time to respond. So that's what we do here, and that's what you do, Ryan. And I can't imagine being at this place without you, our founders, or the people that have joined us in this little experiment we call Rallyday. It's an honor and a privilege.
Thank you. And I hope that you accept my request for you to share some of this content on LinkedIn with the best of intentions. Stay tuned. Mark Hopkins is going to riff on all this stuff. It's a gift. I hope you open it with the proper appreciation and the wisdom that Mark's willing to give us all. So, Mark, thanks for the time, man, and the life that you've given me. Really appreciate it.
All right, Ryan, I'll meet you down the hall. We'll have a beer.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye.